A big hello to everyone out there in comic book land. It's time once again for another jam-packed, info-filled episode of What You Readin'. People ask me all the time, as a world-famous, world-renowned, constantly stopped on the street for my autograph, comic book writer, and they say, "What do you read? What are you reading when you're not writing? What do you read for pleasure? What do you read for information? What are you into? What are you digging recently in the printed form?" Uh, this week, I reread these comics in their original form as they were published. But I read this terrific hardcover collection from DC Comics, printed a number of years ago, that collects Denny O'Neil's brief but memorable run on Superman. And Denny was still a young man, and he got assigned by Julius Schwartz, who was the new editor on the Superman titles. He was new Superman group editor. He had taken the title from Mort Weisinger, who retired. And Julie wanted to take a new direction. And of course, he turned to Denny O'Neil, who had helped take Batman in such a new direction. And Denny was doing a lot of terrific work at DC, trying to not reboot, but explore a lot of DC characters. Now, I worked with Denny for quite a few years, and I didn't pester him with a lot of fanboy questions, but I did want to know about this. I said, "Denny, what was it like writing Superman? Because you wrote it for such a short period of time." And I said, "I loved your run on Superman. I really did. I loved your run on Superman. I love the thought you put into it and the new direction you took it in without violating the character, uh, without breaking all the toys. You kind of delved into Superman's character, what he's about, what makes him tick, and all the rest of it." And then he said that he hated being on it. He didn't want to write Superman. He had nothing against Superman, but he didn't feel he was the right writer for it. And explained a lot of what happened in this brief run. Now, this was at a time when there was a lot of moving parts at DC. There was a lot of dynamism because Kirby had left Marvel and was now at DC, and he was creating the Fourth World titles. And Superman was getting some attention because Kirby had taken over the Jimmy Olsen title. And Jimmy Olsen was like a loss leader title. It was in the back of the pack of the various Superman books. And Kirby took it over and sort of like amped it up, turned everything up to 11. He made it a Jack Kirby comic. And once again, like Denny, without ever violating anything Jimmy Olsen was about, he just, kind of made Jimmy Olsen a little cooler, made it more of an action comic, the rest of it. So in the spirit of all of this, DC's looking around, hey, what other titles can we juice up? And they wanted to juice up Superman. And Julius Schwartz put Denny on it, and he gave him this fantastic art team. Kurt Swan, classic Superman artist, which indicates they didn't want to change everything. They didn't want to reinvent the wheel. They just wanted to give Superman readers something a little more grown up, something a little more involved than the usual Superman fare they have been used to for decades before. And so you get Kurt Swan, and they bring in Murphy Anderson to ink him, and it's a pencil or inker marriage made in heaven. Artwork is fantastic throughout. And Denny, early on in this run, introduces this idea that there's a scientific experiment will destroy all the kryptonite on Earth. So now Superman is literally invulnerable. He has no more weaknesses. But a sort of aberrant effect, an unexpected side effect of this experiment is that they create a homunculus of Superman. And it's like the Superman made out of like irradiated sand. It's a really weird concept, but Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson really make it work visually. So Superman has this kind of doppelganger following him around and emitting some sort of aura that reduces Superman's powers. And a lot of this is what Denny and Julius Schwartz wanted for the character, for him to be reduced from his godlike level of abilities and powers to something a little bit more realistic. Yes, he's still Superman. He still can do all this amazing stuff, but he can't, like, bash planets together or change the rotation of the Earth or anything like that. Nothing completely insane. And they keep all the Superman tropes: the Fortress of Solitude, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Perry White, and of course you've got this new character, Morgan Edge, like I believe Kirby brought him into the mix, who's the new, like, evil owner of the Daily Planet, and he's like a media mogul. He's like a Ted Turner type character. Anyway, Denny explores this, but in reading it all these years later, I read it as a fan, but in the interim, I got to meet Denny and work with Denny, and I understood Denny more. And then rereading it with all of that in mind was absolutely fascinating, because I see so much of Denny in this story. And he's trying to write the best Superman story he can, and he includes some really clever Superman bits and gags. I mean, it's obvious he was conversant with the character. He liked the character. He just didn't think he was suited to write the character. And I can totally empathize with that. But he does such a great job. But you see over the course of this long arc with this, doppelganger and all the rest of it, that Denny is kind of losing his way, doesn't know where to go with it. It's all entertaining. It's all very entertaining. But the biggest indicator to me that he's kind of losing his way, not really sure where to go, is he brings Superman, or no, Wonder Woman, and a character he created, I Ching, this sort of Asian martial arts guru kind of guy. He brings them into the story, and I know as a writer, if ever I was stuck for an arc, or had to do a quick fill-in story on something like Catwoman or something like that, I would always generally bring in other characters I had been writing. And then he was writing Wonder Woman at the time, but I would bring in other characters I was writing as kind of guest stars, kind of make it a Brave and Bold or Marvel team-up kind of story, because that's easier to write. If I had to write in a hurry, if they say, hey, we need to fill in and we need it written this week, okay, give me whatever, Potato Salad Man, but he's going to meet, Captain Fabulous, and a lot of their meeting and interactions and everything else will take up page space. And I think that's what Denny was doing toward the end of this run. And it all kind of doesn't come to a very satisfactory conclusion at the end of it all. But that isn't to say I'm not putting it, that I'm putting it down. It's not to say that it's not entertaining throughout. It's just knowing Denny, I can see where he eventually got into a situation where Julie had to take him off. And then Denny leaves, and then Superman comics immediately return back to business as usual. Kryptonite returns, his super godlike powers return, and everything else, because I don't know if it was sales. I certainly started picking up the title. I was never a regular Superman reader, but I never missed an issue of this. So I don't know the reasoning behind the decision to take Denny off, except that it was probably Denny begging Julie to be taken off the book. But so there you have it. It's a terrific story. If you ever get a chance to read it, if you've already read it, then you're going to agree with me. And I can't see any other option. But also I was able to bring you a little inside baseball, a little background on the workings, the inner workings of Denny O'Neil and his art team. So there you go. That's it. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.